For a closer look at the new policies aimed at boosting the nation's housing market, let's bring in Dr. Byoung-joo, head of KL&P Consulting, and of course our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
So let's try breaking down the policy measures announced just a few hours ago. What was expected, and does that package live up to our expectations?
I think basically, considering what was reported yesterday, I think some of the major newspapers in Korea were using this available material that was made available by the government that was embargoed, indeed, and they're just using it as expected announcements because there is a very close correlation between the expected policy actions that were reported yesterday and then what's announced today. So, I don't know, interesting practice in the media here, but basically, as Hwang Ji summarized, I think there are two very important points here. That is, on the one hand, a mortgage side, government took a dramatic action of increasing, making the so-called, what widely reported was called shared mortgage made available, not just 3,000 people as originally announced in the past, but increasing the recipient or beneficiaries of this shared loan system, increasing that number to 15,000 people, 15,000 households. That was a dramatic increase. For that, I think Hwang Ji has just reported that government was going to make 11 trillion won available for that loan there. So mortgage side, dramatic action there. And on the public housing side, dramatic cut down indeed from the original idea of this happiness house. They were supposed to be they were designed, or they were originally envisioned to be built on the lands that were originally available for the railroad construction and all that. And President, at that time, I think candidate Park Geun-hye actually proposed the idea of using this kind of public lands to build these houses to be rented out as a public housing for the common people. The number is now going to be cut down quite dramatically, from original number of 200,000 down to 140,000. So some vast increase on the mortgage side and then dramatic cut down on the public side. I think those are two important points that need to be noted in the actual announcement of that came out today.
So what is your reaction to this set of measures? I mean, are these going to be proven to be effective for the housing market?
The thing is, I think my own reaction, I need more time to get into more further details about it, but there have been enough criticism in the Korean media, and some of them I think is irresponsible. The way I see it, government is just trying to come up as many different ideas possible and plausible ideas to help the overall real estate market. But Korean media was heavily criticizing the government, saying, well, this is kind of encouraging people to borrow more, like a shared mortgage, because shared mortgage, the idea is people will get this mortgage with about interest rate that ranges somewhere between 1% to 2%. And then if the housing value rises, they'll return that additional value to the government. Okay, that far is fine and fair. And critics were saying if the valuation of the housing falls, then the borrower will bear the burden right there. So we cannot make system all the perfect. So I don't think they can really criticize for that as a measure to encourage people to borrow more. But there is such criticism right there. And they're saying, we got to drive down the overall prices of jeonse and then 월세, and that's missing in today's announcement. That's one of the main point of the criticism. And the way I see it, I don't know what the kind of plausible ways are out there to make that possible. And the only way we can make possible is to, as I said before, encourage people to do what they want to do naturally in the market and better. And for that, I think the only way, in my own opinion, is to encourage people to convert from the current jeonse system, the supplier side, from current jeonse system to more of the 월세 system, and then make the price go down with the increased supply, so that people on the consumption side will actually go for this lower price. So that's the only way to go, but that was not announced today. And so those were the two criticisms that I could notice in today's media reports in Korea.
Now, Dr. Kim, one of the key reasons for today's announcement is probably the growing public awareness that the nation's construction sector is really struggling, and it's been struggling for too long. Now, we knew that SMEs, small and mid-sized businesses in the sector were in horrible shape, but now that trend has expanded to bigger firms.
Right, indeed. This is a serious case, and we have to talk about this because it's the problem is not only limited to the construction market itself, but also it's affecting the overall corporate bond market as a whole. Remember Dongyang case where they got into this big trouble with this construction business, and then they issued all these bonds that they could not pay back, and then went belly up of bankruptcy and affected so many different investors. That actually has caused kind of like a freeze in the with some exaggeration, I suppose, but it had a major negative impact in the corporate bond market. So now corporations, especially those corporations that are construction businesses, they're having really hard time borrowing through bond issues. They have to offer a lot of high interest rate here in the bond market, and they're facing great challenge in terms of raising their capital. So indeed, construction businesses are facing big challenge here in Korea, and especially in the bond market in terms of their financing and all that. We are talking about major challenges here.
Well, can we take some comfort in the fact that these firms are winning large contracts overseas?
Oh, actually, yeah, that's one of their key ways for survival in the future. Korean construction companies are actively getting these kind of deals overseas, and that overall record has been improving big time. And one of the big news is, the recent one is Darim Construction, for instance. They got huge refinery construction deal in Oman, and that amount is like $1 billion all going to the Darim Construction Company. And Daewoo Construction Company actually got a huge deal in Iraq recently, building breakwater construction in the port area, and that amount is about like $693 million. So that's a big one. And the POSCO Construction got a big deal in building a steel-making factory in Brazil, whose amount was about $600 million. So these construction companies, yes, indeed, in Korea, they face a lot of troubles here, but some of the really active ones are getting big deals and good deals overseas, and so we'll get to see small number of people, small number of construction companies actually surviving thanks to this performance overseas.
Right. So in the coming year, in 2014, which is just a month away, what do we expect from the nation's construction sector as well as the housing market?
I think there are key problems. Number one, I'll only mention two. Number one is this passing the laws that are sitting in the National Assembly right now. They really need to be passed. I mean, government makes all these announcements, but unless they pass as into law, they will not be materialized, they will not be implemented. So there will be one critical uncertainty factor that the government will need to work out together with all the politicians on both sides. And the other one is interest rate. QE exit, QE tapering will actually have an impact of increasing interest rate as a whole, and that means there will be a very negative impact on Korean housing market, because those people who already have loans extended to them, Koreans usually have these varying rates, right? So if the interest rate goes up, we'll get to see more serious problem of house poor, what we call here, and further discouragement of the people who could be thinking about buying houses. So interest rate is what to be watched here in Korea.
All right. Well, definitely the housing market, something that we'll keep a close eye on, as it has direct implications for not only the daily Koreans, but the entire economy as a whole.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, thank you so much for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.